Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. I have a really exciting episode for you today. I'm going to show you how to make custom bra cups to use with a power mesh foundation to add support to a tankini top. This is a hot topic for me because if you have a D plus cup size, it's really important to have good support in your bathing suit because um, you want to feel confident, you want to feel comfortable. And last year I used my gym tank pattern to make a tankini top and I lined it, but it really wasn't comfortable. I had to wear a separate soft knit bra under it to make it wearable. So this year I have ventured on to creating an actual support, sort of an upgrade for my tankini. And if you've been following along with me, I did part one of the DIY sports bra where I took apart my sports bra and showed you how to make a pattern. I have some exciting news. Part two is going to be premiered at Bra Builders the Great Bra Sewing Bee, which is an online event in July. It's going to be held during the weekend of July 23rd to the 26th, and you'll be able to watch it there if you want to join this event. It's an amazing event. They have a incredible lineup of sewing instructors, and it's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of really good information if you're interested in making your own bra. And I think there's some sportswear in there too, like some athletic wear. I think it's going to be really, really fun. So look in the description below for a link to that event. Registration starts registration starts June 23rd. So look for that. And then to whet your appetite, I thought this would be a perfect project because what I'm going to do to make my custom bra cups is I'm going to use pieces from the sports bra that I made, my sports bra pattern. So if you didn't see part one of DIY sports bra, I put a link below this video to that as well, so you can see how to make the pieces. I think I sewed together the sports bra out of some firm knit, and you can see it here on this Ditto. I'm really excited because I feel like she's dressed up enough that I can show her with her little sports bra pinned on. And it was really funny when I was starting to work on this project, I went with my knit sample into the bathroom to look in the mirror. And then I realized I didn't need to do that. I could just put it on her. And it makes it really easy for me to work with creating, a shape that's going to fit. So let me start off by showing you what we're going to be doing. I already created a sample for this, and let me start by showing you, this is the front of my gym tank pattern. And you can see I've drawn my cup pieces right on top of it so I could see, how they fit, reshape them, and position them in the appropriate spot for where my apex and my fullest part of my bust is. I'm going to show you how to do this. And then of course the challenge that comes with creating a support is you have a 3D cup. Okay, so here's one of the cups I made. And then you need the fabric to attach it to. And of course, the fabric I'm going to attach it to is Power Mesh. Power Mesh is amazing because it's lightweight. It's here's an example of it right here. You can see through it. It's very firm and it's also stretchy. So you can't just cut it out of the original shape because that would be way too tight, because this Power Mesh has to go around the contour of the cup and fit. So I'm going to show you how to create pattern pieces for this Power Mesh as well to make it fit nicely. And you can see vertically it's a little bit shorter because on my first go around I didn't think of that, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to fill it in so it lines up with the bottom guideline for this foundation that I'm working on, because the cool thing about Power Mesh is it's firmer than the knit I'm going to use, the lycra knit I'm going to use for the public side of the tankini. Stretches more. So cutting out the Power Mesh so it lays the same size as the public fabric will create a nice, it'll be nice and easy to sew together, but it'll feel firmer because it's not going to stretch as much as the Power Mesh. So this is what we're going to be creating today, and I did this test, and in doing the test I'm going to add the additional step of adding length to the pieces so that it will lay nicely and we can sew it together and line the whole top portion of the tankini with this foundation. So this is what we're going to be making. We're going to use Power Mesh though, we're not going to use muslin. All right, so our first step is to trace a copy of the cups from the sports bra pattern, and I'm going to be using my center front and my middle. In addition to that, there is a side piece that creates the cup, and you can see it on the side over here, this portion right here. I'm not going to use that for my cup because I want to create two individual round cups that are not attached in the middle. So I'm not going to be using this piece that wraps around the top. That's this piece right here. I'm not using that. So I'm going to be working with the center front piece and the middle piece to make my custom cup. You never want to cut your master pattern. So I've traced my pieces, and when we go to sew our cups together after we create the pattern for it, we're going to use a technique of butting up the edges and zigzagging them together because the foam has some, thickness to it. This is about 1/8 of an inch. And if you sew a traditional seam here, it's going to be really bulky. So you can see in advance that I used a triple zigzag to sew it together, and I used a piece of non-stretch nylon to support the seam. We're going to cut these pieces out, and we're also going to get rid of those seam allowances between the center front and middle because we're going to be butting it up and we don't need those seam allowances. So I'm just going to quickly cut these out. I didn't cut them out before I got on camera because I wanted to show you that we're going to get rid of those seam allowances. All right, so there's the one piece. And the other thing, it's really important if you have notches that you transfer those to your traced copy so you know how to sew it together. All right, and then I'm gonna, oops, I did the same thing, cut out on the seam allowance line. We're gonna pin these pieces on Miss Ditto over here so I can show you how they look 3D on a bust. Then we're gonna measure out from the apex to get the total diameter of the bra cup. And this is really one of the exciting things about having a custom dress form like this. It allows you to, visually see what you're making on your actual shape. And for someone who has a G cup sized bust, it's nice to have this to be able to visually see what I'm doing, and I can make my cups the size that I want without having to run back and forth to the mirror. And I put a piece of twill tape to signify my my center front, so I know that that's where that is, and I'm going to just pin this to it. Let me just quickly pop it on with some pins. Now this firm knit stretches a little bit, so the paper is going to be slightly smaller than what I'm pinning it to, but it's pretty close because I used a knit that didn't have a ton of stretch. All right, so I'm just going to pin this on. All right, and then I'm going to pin my my middle front piece on, and I'm matching my notches when I pin this. So I'm matching my notches. I'm just going to pin it on so you can see. The other thing I can do here is I can mark my apex, and I can measure down from my shoulder, so when we go to make the flat pattern, it'll match up to what I'm, it'll match up to my shape. All right, so there it is. Okay, so you can see it doesn't quite fit because, again, it's paper and it's not stretching, but it's pretty close. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from my shoulder, which I also have marked up here with some twill tape, and I'm going to measure to my apex, and we're going to go with 12 inches down. So I'm just going to make a mark there so I have it. Okay, so that's going to be where my apex is. Just going to make a little mark there so I have that for a reference. Then what I want to do is I want to use the tape measure for one other thing. I want to measure out to see how big I'd like to make my cups, or what the diameter is going to be. Because I don't want it too big, but I want it to cover the whole front portion of my bust. So I'm thinking that from the apex, if I measure 4.5 inches out, I think I like that. I'm just going to measure 4.5 inches out in a couple places just to see. All from the apex. I'm going to do one over here. So you can see I'm going to be trimming away some of the piece. And I'm just going to roughly mark it in now, and then I'm going to do it better with the ruler when I get on the table. Just mark there. Let me just do one right here to give me an idea. All right, so I've marked my rough outer edges of what I want my cup to be sized at, and I'm going to take this off, and then let's look at it on the table. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to keep these right position next to each other, and right at the apex you can see that that matches, and then you've got the shaping of it's basically like almost like a princess seam running through this cup. So let's just do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my my plastic ruler. I love using it to make circles because it's got little holes, and I can use a pin to hold it. So I'm going to put it at the 1 where my apex is, and I am just going to use that to measure out to my marks. So because I'm at the 1 here, I'm going to be measuring to 5.5 because I'm off, I'm off an inch. So I'm just going to measure at 5.5, and I'm just going to slide it around to create a, a better, more complete circle. All right, and then I'm going to swing it right onto this one. And again, I think my 5.5 is actually right there. It's not exact on the dress form, so it's a little off here. So it's actually the edge, so this is a no. All right, so I'm just gonna bring this around. Put that back over there. And then I can mark 5.5 there. I can mark 5.5 here. That one matches. I think when I was reaching around on the opposite side, I didn't quite, you know, match it right. But that's why we, you know, do a first draft on the dress form and then true it up or really define the shape once we get it back on our work table here. All right, so this is exciting. I have my circle. All right, so I'm just gonna create a solid line so you can see what we've created here. All right. Okay, so there's one side. You can see the parts we're going to be cutting off. And then on this one, on this side, it's going to come over to the edge like that. And then it's just going to be the edge till we get over here. All right, so there's the other side. And before I cut off the extra, I'm just going to make sure it still sews together. So I'm going to line up my notches here. And I can see that this doesn't exactly match, so I'm going to bring that up. This little shape here got a little funked up. So really this shape is like this. Okay, to make sure that that's going to sew together there. Let's check the bottom notch. Those match up perfectly. So here's my notches, there's my edge. All right, so now I can cut these out. Okay, so now the next step is to see how they fit on my my front pattern piece. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark down that 12 inches from the shoulder. Okay, you can see that the bra cup pieces look like they're too big for the front of my tankini pattern, but what we have to remember is it's not going to be squished flat like this when it's on our body. It's going to be contoured like this. So you can see that once it's shaped into a cup, there'll be space at center front and at the side. So even though it looks like it's touching, I'm still happy with this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure, I'm going to draw a line that's maybe 1/2 inch to 3/4 inches below the bottom of my cup. That's going to define the bottom of my power mesh support. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace the shape of these pieces right on here because we're going to use this to create the pattern pieces for the power mesh. So let me just trace these. Oh, actually, look at what happened here. When I traced this in pen, it's not lining, my notches are not lining up, so this really needed to be a little bit lower. So now I'm making a mess of it. But see, this is why this is really important. See, my notches are not matching. So I'm going to lower this, and this is now going to become a little bit of a mess. But let me use a different color. I'll use pink. You want to make sure, and actually the thing I should have done is pin this. So that's my bad. But that's something that can easily happen when you're tracing. So pin it on so it doesn't move. And then see, I'm also happier with it being down here because I don't want it to touch my armhole because that's going to be a separate piece when I sew together the foundation. So actually, this is now a no-no. This is a universal symbol for no. Just putting slashes through the line. So that's a boo-boo, so I apologize that I'm making a mess of this, but I want to make sure I get this right. So let me just trace it here. Get this one out of the way for right now. So see, stuff happens. So you always want to double check yourself. All right, so here the pink is going to be the correct one. And the blue one is the boo-boo on the side. All right, and then I'm going to pin this one back. Lining up my notches, that's important. And I'm going to pin it on so it doesn't move. All right, and then let me trace that. I'll trace that in pink too, so we know that those are correct. All right. And I'll put my notches so we have them. And actually those agree, so those can be the same. All right, let's look and see what this looks like now. All right, so there's my pattern. Now, what we're gonna do is we're going to create a three-piece front for the Power Mesh foundation. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create I'm just gonna dash in a shape here. And I'm going to have this come straight across here. All right, so this is going to be a seam right here. And then we have to create a two-piece pattern for down here. Now, here's the thing. I can't just extend these and cut it out because we'll be taking out a huge amount of width. Remember, we need the foundation to agree with the public fabric. So what I'm going to do to create a pattern that will fit is I'm going to measure the amount that we got rid of down here, which is almost 2 inches. So I have to add that back in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's use a different color. We'll be very colorful today. Let's use blue, baby blue. I'm going to bring this line in 1/2 inch on both sides. Okay, that's the first thing. So we're going to continue this line from where it matches down like this. And like this. Okay, so this is going to become the new for the pattern right here, like this and like this. And then I'm also going to come in on the top. Now on the top, this is 3 1/4. That's a little bit bigger. I know I'm going to add an additional 1/2 inch to make up the rest that I'm missing here. I'm going to extend my center front out 1/2 inch. And I'm going to extend my side seam out 1/2 inch. So that's going to make the bottom match. Okay, so see, I've got the extra 1/2 inch here and here. So now that this gap is now accounted for. Up at the top, because it's a little bit more than 1 inch bigger, I'm actually going to close this 1 inch on both sides. Okay, and then I'm just going to redraw that, bringing it back into the apex area where it touches. So there's that, and there's that. When I take it apart, maybe this doesn't need to be as curved. I want this to create a nice shape when I cut it apart. Okay, so now my measurement is the same even though I still have this gap. This is going to be cut out here and this is going to be cut out here, but I've added the total amount back in, so when we sew it back together, it will match the base. Because this is a traced copy of my pattern and I have a pattern that I can cut my tankini top out of over here, I'm just going to cut this out. You can also trace it, the pieces, if you want to finish your pattern piece. I'm going to have to tape to add seam allowances, but I'm just going to cut this apart so you can see what it is. So first, this piece is going to be shaped like this. And also, let me just cut this out. So this piece right here is going to be a pattern piece. And then we've got this. Oh, wait a minute. Remember when I showed you the muslin, I wanted to add length. And I almost forgot about that again. Let me just tape this back up for a second. I'm going to extend this down another 1/2 inch just to give myself some extra length here. All right, so there's the extra length I wanted to add based on my test muslin. All right, so let me just cut this out now. You can see my paper is a little bit ripply. I'm kind of excited. It's always exciting when you order a new roll of paper. So I can't wait for that to come because I only have like another 12 inches on my roll. I go through a lot of paper. All right, so here is the side. Basically, this is the side front piece for my foundation. Okay. And here is my center front piece. All right, and it does have a little divot in there. You know, I almost feel like that shape got a little bit screwed up when I had those pieces touching, or maybe it was the curve that I used to draw my line. But I really think I don't want it to dip in like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a piece of paper and I'm going to tape it here. And I'm just going to true that up a little bit because that did get a little, oops. That did get a little bit funked up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim a little off here and add a little bit because it should be more of a straight, this should be straighter like that. So if I were to cut this, just true it up a little bit. There. All right, so that's a better shape. I cut the top part off where the strap is, so we have to add seam allowances in here too because we cut, and we're going to sew that back together. So I'm going to put a strip of paper here. Okay, and I'm going to sew this on my serger, so it's about a 1/4 inch-ish seam allowance. I'm going to add a 1/2 inch here and here, add a little extra length in here too. I added a 1/2 inch down here, and I'm going to add a little extra up there as well. Once I go to sew it together, if it's too long, I can always trim it back a little bit, but if it's too short, because remember, the power mesh is not going to stretch as much as the Lycra on the outside, so I just want to make sure that it's not going to be pulling too much to fit. So I'm going to add that little extra 1/2 inch up here as well, a 1/4 on each one. And really, when I sew it on my serger, it's almost 3/8, so it's just a little extra length. Okay, so that finishes that piece. And I'll just cut that out. And then let's add Let's add a seam allowance to the top edge of this piece as well, my side front. Okay, and let's cut that off. Okay, then we also have to add it to the neckline slash shoulder strap pattern piece. And I'm just going to use this so I can create one nice seam allowance. Once you make your first one of these, then you'll have a better idea of, you know, did you add enough extra? This is a little bit of a guess that I needed this much vertical length added, so we'll see. All right. Okay, so there is my finished upper front piece. Now the other thing I want to do, I don't know about you, but I tend to get sunburned on my chest, and I try to do sunblock, and sometimes I forget, or sometimes it washes off. So the other thing I'm going to do to my front is I'm going to raise up my front neckline a little bit. And this is already a pretty high neckline. I'm not currently wearing it, but it's similar to what I have on here. I'm just going to raise it up an inch and a half more, because I really want nice coverage here, and that way I'm not, you know, I'm protecting my skin. So this will just give me a little bit more sun protection. Just going to bring it in like that. Now you notice I drew a really generous straight line perpendicular to my center front, because I want this to look like a scoop. I don't want it to look like a V. So you do want to be creating a right angle here. So let me just finalize the shape of this. I'm not changing the width of the shoulder strap at the shoulder seam though. So I'm not going to have to adjust the back, but we'll just make this a nice shape. All right, so now I can cut this out. All right, so let's look at all our finished pattern pieces now. Okay, so truing this up is going to show us one other thing that I forgot to do. This is why this is always good to double and triple check yourself. I can see that this is all going to sew together, except what did I forget to do? I forgot to add the 1/2 inch to the center front of this upper front bodice piece. There's a lot of moving parts to this. So I'm happy to show you that sometimes I don't remember every step. All right, so let's just quickly add that 1/2 inch. Okay. All right, so now we have a complete pattern. And what I want to show you is I'm going to put these cup pieces back down here. Even though we reduced the amount of gap on our foundation piece, it still has a contoured shape, and it'll make a nice foundation to sew the cups to, instead of trying to sew it together or sew it onto a flat piece of power mesh. We have a shaped foundation to sew the cup to, and I think that's going to work out really nicely. And the extra is going to be taken up by the stretch of the body. This is what the completed pattern looks like. I'm going to line the back to this point as well, because then I can use the lining of power mesh to finish my complete neckline and armhole. I did a video last week showing how to finish neckline and armhole with a facing. So we're going to do that the exact same way. So I'll put a link to that video below as well if you missed it. So this is how you create your pattern for custom cups and for a power mesh foundation to put under a bathing suit. Join me next week and I will show you how to sew it together.